Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome into the Lindsey Beckham Show. We are live here in the Men's Health and Women's Wellness of Mississippi studios. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and X. Hope everybody had a great weekend. So after the show Friday, there was some big news out of Hinds County. We're going to discuss that today. We are joined by our favorite attorney, Mr. Shaun Yurtkuran. Shaun, how are you?
Pretty good. Doing pretty good.
Good. We are also joined by Ted DiBiase's attorney, Mr. Scott Gilbert. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how are y'all?
Good, good. So, y'all are the attorneys in the room, so I'm going to let y'all break this down. What happened Friday?
What happened Friday? Okay, Scott, I'll let you start with that. What happened Friday, since I wasn't there? I was like the rest of us, who was completely shocked that you got a not guilty verdict on 13 counts by the feds on the case that I think the entire state, and because of Mr. DiBiase's celebrity status, the nation had been watching. So if you could kind of explain to our audience what that was about, as distinctly as you can. I know it's kind of hard for you.
Well, the trial started back in January. We had a little pause because somebody had a little health issue, and we got going again in late February. We ended up trying, I think it was 22 total days in trial, including the day we got the verdict, which is essentially a month-long trial. The jury started deliberating Friday morning at 8:50. At about 12:20, we got a call from the court to come over because they had a note with a question from the jury. It took us about 20 minutes to get situated, and by that time, the jury had sent a second note out. And so the first note said, do we have to believe that the defendant obtained the money by fraud, or is it enough if we believe other people did and the defendant didn't know about it? And then before we could answer that question, their second note said, disregard, we figured it out, and what are we doing about lunch? So we got ready to leave the courthouse, and about 2 or 3 minutes later, the court security officer came out and said, don't go anywhere. They just said they don't want lunch. They'll be done in a second.
Well, that's surprising. Usually, I'm sure just like I do, a lot of times the jury will wait for the food. It's usually the way it works.
It is the first time I've ever had a jury pass up a free meal.
Right. I've never seen that. They usually will wait for that.
So, but the judge had kind of held out on him a little bit. It was almost 1 o'clock and he hadn't fed him yet. So I think they figured, that's going to take an hour to order it and get here. Let's just do this now and go eat where we want. So
they just want to get out of that room. I guess they'd been there for, because they had to break for how many weeks was it now?
I think it was 4 or 5. It was a considerable break.
And that's got to be difficult for a jury, as and for the audience out there, because they get instructions to say, hey, you can't go look this up on the media. You can't look this up on social media or ask your friends about it. So how do you do that for 4 to 5 weeks? I assume you guys, that was a big line of questioning when they came back, that break, right?
I wasn't there the first day we came back. I missed the first 2 days, still trying to get my situation resolved. And so I think they voir-dired the jury on that a little bit with Mr. Hirschman. Eric Hirschman was there in my stead. And so I think they asked those questions and took care of that. But, the thing that was most impressive about this jury, and listen, I'm a huge believer in the jury system. I've never personally been involved in a case where they got one wrong, even in the few cases I've had that went the other way. The judge asked them before he took the break, he said, can you guys come back? And do you want to come back? And they said, absolutely, we want to come back. And so they talked about, late February and then what they could do in March, and everybody was on board with it. And so they all came back.
Oh, so he actually gave them the option of whether they wanted to return after would you have to go start the case over again, or?
Yeah, obviously what you have to do in a situation where you lose your counsel of choice, you have to move for a mistrial.
Sure.
You have to do it. And that's what they did while I was out. And so the judge, in considering that, one of the things he did, one of the pieces of information he wanted was to find out, well, does this jury want to stick it out? And are they actually available to stick it out?
Gotcha.
And so when the jury was unanimous that they wanted to stay with the case and that their schedules would work and allow them to do that, I think that probably had a big impact on his decision not to grant the motion for a mistrial and just to pause the trial and see what happened.
I
And
personally
the
waited around for lunch. I'm just saying.
Thank
yeah,
you.
right.
I've never.
Most
turned down
people
a
would.
email.
No, I was telling Lindsay, we had a joke when I was in the DA's office that, okay, we know that they're gonna wait if they were gonna go out to deliberate before lunch or right before dinner, depending on what time it was. We knew that it was gonna be at least that long. They're gonna be out
Right.
that long, and you would factor that into it. Well, the government had actually opposed the motion for a mistrial, if my recollection is correct. I bet they feel differently now. Like they probably, wanted to go a different way, but they'd actually opposed that because I assume they felt it was going good for them and they wanted it. That I probably would have opposed it too, but that's once you're in the midst of a trial, you don't want to start over again.
Well, it's an interesting point you raised because at the time that happened, I was in the second day of cross-examination of John Davis, and it could not have been going worse for the government. The entire first day of his cross-examination, he exonerated Teddy over and over and over, denied a conspiracy, said, no, we never intended to do anything wrong. Everything we discussed about the work, we discussed before the contracts, and we had, he had a plan on how he was going to do it. I went home that night and I told my wife, 20 years of law practice, this is the greatest day I've ever had. And so the next day I went back and we were in the process. He was continuing to do that. And so it was exceptional. It made what happened particularly frustrating.
Well, it's hard for us because when you're just looking at it, what you're reading the news reports, all we saw, I think it was from Mississippi Today was doing extensive coverage of it, were the text messages. Yeah,
yeah.
It was this insinuation that there was this, I don't know, I don't know why I'd use this, but like they were having some kind of sexual relationship between the two. Is the way I think the public portrayed it. I'm just going to put it out there. I mean, that's the way I think you read those articles. That was the only way you would be able to take that. And so that's all we saw on the outside is that it's these two guys and they were obviously in love and that's what, and they worked out some scheme to get money from state. I mean, that's the way it was portrayed to the public, I think.
Oh yeah, no, there was, and I think I said this morning to Clay. I said, if people are struggling with the incongruency of the verdict versus the coverage, I think the issue there is with the coverage.
Well, there's always an issue with the coverage when it's Mississippi Today. Just say,
the jury got to hear all of it. The salaciousness and the innuendo and everything else, and so, but they got to hear everything, and throughout the process, and look. There's only so much real estate on a news show. There's only so much real estate on Twitter. You can't repeat every word that's said. And so I'm that's certainly the truth. And so the public is not in a position to get the entire story. They're just not. And I mean, and so I understand, and we all make judgments based on what we hear. I mean, it's what we do as human beings.
I mean, well, you said something about the conspiracy, and I thought that was something for maybe the public to understand. That's something I obviously I was having an issue with at the beginning of the Outs trial, where conspiracies we know, and for the public, it's two or more people agree to do something unlawful. And I think in the federal statute, it's you have to have an overt act. The state statute is a little bit different. I think you just can have an agreement. Mm-hmm. But to me, I don't know how Teddy DiBiase was agreeing to conspire with John Davis to do something unlawful. Like, what was the conspiracy between them two? It seems like he was a vendor or contractor, whatever way you want to put it, and Davis was giving him a contract. It looked like there was a conspiracy between the two of them.
Well, the indictment alleged that it was a conspiracy to enter into a sham contract to do no work. And so when, obviously we'd been dealing with this case for 3 years before the federal indictment came down. And so I was really surprised that was the position that they took. Because we had a pile of work. I mean, and what it was, passes for work in any context. Now, I think what they ultimately argued to the jury was, okay, well, this stuff that he did, they never would call it work. This stuff that he did is not what was called for in the contract. Okay. But you got a guy that did a number of TV commercials, radio commercials. He was always somewhere speaking on behalf of the Families First initiative and telling people about the programs and where they could get access to them, among a lot of other things he was doing. And so, I always felt like just a jury of normal Mississippians, of which I'm one, would have a difficult time with the concept of, okay, so he did a bunch of stuff, but you're just saying it wasn't the right stuff, and now you want us to put him in jail for doing what you say wasn't the right stuff. And I always felt like that would be a little bit difficult.
Well, I mean, and also it seems to me that it makes it more of a civil case than it ever does a criminal case. If there was some, and then the complaining party would be the state of Mississippi. Like, or I think John Davis would be like, hey, look, I contracted with you, Teddy, to do this stuff. You didn't do what we wanted. We want some of the money back. That seemed like that would be
right, and that would have been virtually impossible to work with, because what you had was a situation where MDHS had been directed, or the idea was to privatize as much of its services, and so they basically heaped a lot of their work on these two nonprofits, the one in North Mississippi and South Mississippi. They took those two entities were getting about $1 million a year in TANF money. And then all of a sudden in early 2016, and this is before Teddy DiBiase or Brett DiBiase ever are in the picture, all of a sudden they go from getting $1 million a year to $20 million a year apiece. And the direction from John Davis is, hey, you guys are MDHS now in the North, and the other group, you're MDHS in the South. And they're like, great, boss, what's the plan? And he said, I just told you that's the plan. Figure it out. And so they were overwhelmed, they were overmatched, and you can imagine what type of utter disaster that was, having worked in government, Shaun. I mean, it's a total disaster, right? And nobody's really keeping up with anything, or there's so many moving parts now, you can't focus on everything. And then you add into it, the personality that John Davis turned out to have after he became executive director. Nobody was willing to speak up or say anything to him. Hey, boss, we may be doing this the wrong way, or we need to do this or that.
It becomes sheer inertia after a while in government service. I know exactly. The government will always figure out a way to do things the least efficient way, is what I learned in all of my years working in the government. And because everybody's used to doing it that way, like that's the way it always ends up working out. And the other saying I used to have the DA's office is, if you do really well, it hurts you as a government employee. So you're better off just like doing the bare minimum. Because you do really well, you just get more work and no more money. It's usually the way it works out.
Well, that's the same experience I had in 10 years at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I mean, it doesn't really pay off, at least in that regard. It's something you better derive personal satisfaction from, because that's all you're going to get. But yeah, I think one of the examples I used in my closing argument was, in a previous life, I was a fireman and a policeman, and I told the jury, I said, I remember walking into a Memphis fire station once just to walk in and shoot the breeze with the guys, and I saw this sign, and it said, Memphis Fire Department, 130 years of tradition, unimpeded by progress. And I said, well, that's the government in a nutshell,
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, that was the situation. And so the contracts end up coming through these two organizations. And, the government's theory of the case is, well, they set all this up so they could run these contracts through these two organizations so they could hide them. But the problem with that was that system had been set up before any of this ever started. And so the contracts go through the other two organizations. Okay, well, then he's not doing what the contracts specifically say he's supposed to be doing. The problem with that, as you know, Shaun, is the parties to a contract can agree to amend the contract. Now, any lawyer would say you got to do that in writing, or you need to do it in writing, but you don't have to. You can do it verbally. And so there were so many text messages where John Davis was communicating with Nancy New or Christy Webb. Hey, I'm going to have Teddy do this. I'm going to have Teddy do that. And every time they would respond, hey, that's great. We love it. He's doing great. It's great work. By all means, have him do that. And then, of course, John's communicating to Teddy, or they're present at the same time. And so, what you've got are a lot of, at least arguably, amendments to the contract. Various contracts, but the point was everybody knew what was going on, in that control group, and everybody was fine with it. And Teddy was ever present, and so I thought it was going to be difficult if we could just tell that direct story. If we could ignore the salaciousness, and we could ignore sort of the appeals to emotion, about various other aspects, and just keep the jury focused, or keep our case and what we talk to witnesses about focused on those points. And that's what we did.
Yeah, I think, and that's where I was kind of going before about the conspiracy.
So y'all hold that thought. We got to take a break. We'll be right back here. Y'all stay with us. There's lots more to break down here on the Lindsey Beckham Show, WIB 103.9. Stay with us. Lindsey Beckham Show, WIB 103.9. Stay with us.
1039 WYAB.
Americans for Prosperity is Mississippi's and the country's leading grassroots organization dedicated to promoting economic freedom and personal liberty. Americans for Prosperity advocates for limited government, free market policies, and empowering individuals. When given freedom and opportunity, Americans are capable of extraordinary things. If you are ready to make a difference in our country and want to get involved, then visit americansforprosperity.org. Be a part of positive change at americansforprosperity.org. Paid for by Americans for Prosperity.
Get ready, Louisiana! Johnny's Pizza House is turning up the heat with all sweet the swamp pizza. Packed with crawfish, shrimp, a taste of crab, andouille sausage, bell peppers, onions, jalapenos, and a blend of Cajun spices, all smothered in delicious mozzarella cheese. It's the perfect bite of the bayou and the perfect meal for any Cajun crave. Try our Cajun flip or dive into a sweet the swamp pizza bowl. A taste of Louisiana flavor is waiting on you. Let's share a slice today at Johnny's Pizza House.
Hi, Kim Wade here. Hot weather requires us to run the AC nonstop. Pure Air Consultants can inspect your unit today to ensure your AC is operating at peak performance. Pure Air Consultants is your go-to ring partner that can get the job done and have you resting in comfort in no time. Locally owned and operated, they have proudly served our community for over 22 years. Contact Pure Air Consultants today at mypureairconsultants.com. Ream and Pure Air Consultants to the rescue.
Antique Mall of the South has 14,000 square feet of pristine, clean floor space. Home to beautiful, timeless antique treasures. Antique Mall of the South is open Monday to Saturday, 10 to 5. Check them out online at antiquemallofthesouth.com or go to the Antique Mall of the South Facebook page. You can also read the dozens of 5-star reviews online. Come see for yourself at Antique Mall of the South in Ridgeland. Now open Monday to Saturday, 10 to 5. That's Antique Mall of the South, Highway 51 in Ridgeland.
When you feel like your business is drowning in paperwork and compliance issues, it's time to call P-Police. Let P-Police take care of the busy work. Save valuable time and focus on what really matters, growing your business. P-Police is based in Ridgeland, so you're always dealing with local professionals who will actually understand your business and its needs. Join thousands of satisfied clients who trust P-Police to simplify their employee administration. Visit ppolice.com. That's ppolice.com to learn more.
I'm speaking with Lee Bounds of Rapid Rate Mortgage. Why is Rita Jensen the type of real estate professional you are looking for?
As a mortgage professional, I look for making transactions easier, and Rita Jensen with Remax Connection is a prime example of that. Her attention to detail, her strong communication skills really help us as a mortgage company make everything smooth. From start contract to close, she helps me.
RitaJensen.net.
Get ready, Mississippi. You're invited to Cameron's Garage, Claws and Clovers on Saturday, March 28th. Kick things off with brunch from 10 to 2. Then stick around as the crawfish boil starts at 2 p.m. Fresh, hot, and full of flavor. And that's not all. Live music from Burnham Road. So bring your crew and get ready to party. Great food, cold drinks, live music, and St. Patty's vibes all day long. Cameron's Garage, where the party never stops. Cover starts at 6. Don't miss it.
Welcome back to the Men's Health and Women's Wellness of Mississippi studios. It is Monday. It is a beautiful day outside. We are live here on the Lindsey Beckham Show. I'm, of course, Lindsey Beckham. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and X. 601-879-0002 is the number to the show. If you have any questions or comments you'd like to make, 601-879-4648 is our text line. We are joined today after the breaking news late Friday afternoon that there was a verdict in the Ted DiBiase TANF scandal case, I guess you could call it. I think a lot of people were shocked by the verdict. I definitely was. I thought there would be some sort of accountability. I know it just seems like, in my opinion, my personal opinion, just a regular person, not a lawyer, no law experience, but it just seems like everybody involved had to know that there was something going on that wasn't right. And we always talk about how you're judged in, the public court of opinion. So I think a lot of people were shocked, as I was, and we are joined with Scott Yurtkuran, Shaun Yurtkuran and Scott Gilbert. Shaun Yurtkuran, our attorney here that always gives his legal input on WYAB, and then Scott Gilbert, who was the defense attorney for Ted DiBiase in this trial, and they are helping break down some of the facts of the trial. So again, I will let y'all have at it.
I think that's a good question, Lindsey. Scott, I'll let you answer that too. Was that a hard thing for you guys to overcome? And what I mean is this. I think what she says is that it looks so bad. The optics of this are bad. This is money that's intended for poor people. And you got this contract that Ted DiBiase Jr. is getting to perform, let's call it questionable, whichever way you want to call it. He did work. I think I'll agree on that. But for the amount of money he's receiving for this work seems exorbitant based on what the intended purpose of the money is. Now, not just him, but along with others as well.
Sure.
So, I mean, is that you had to focus on to overcome that feeling? Because the jury, in my mind, and you know this too, being a trial lawyer, I mean, they pay attention to that. Sometimes you get, I like to call it what I thought. You know, I said this on a radio show before about this case. I said that legally I didn't theory, but optically, sometimes a jury needs a sacrificial lamb. I mean, sometimes they do, and that just tends to happen in cases. And this is kind of one of those cases where it looks so bad that it must be difficult to overcome that.
Well, you always worry, you know, is there a certain amount of money where the facts don't matter anymore, right? You know, and is a jury going to come over the rail and take matters into their own hands? So, yeah. You know, that's something you always think about. And you're right, the narrative there is not wholly inaccurate. And it was certainly, I think, the biggest hurdle to overcome. What we had to do was just sort of educate the jury a little bit about what this money actually was for and how it came to be. And I guess the Cliff Notes version is, you know, we used to have welfare, and that was where people would come in and get individual cash money. I need this money to buy food or to help pay my electric bill or something like that. And that stopped back in the mid-90s when Congress changed welfare to TANF, and TANF stands for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. But when they changed the law, they gave each individual state a substantial amount of discretion on how they used that money. And so Mississippi, like a lot of other states, essentially ceased giving out cash assistance. So the money, you know, when you say money intended for the poor, that's a pretty broad thing. And so the money was never intended by the state of Mississippi to be handed out to the poor as cash assistance. One of the exhibits we were able to put into evidence was some stats from 2016 that showed well over 10,000 people had applied for cash assistance under this program, and just over 100 people actually got it. So
why was that? Why I heard you say that on Clay's show earlier. Why was that? Why did only 100 people get it out of 10? They were not qualified?
You know,
what were the reasons?
The legislature, part of it's statutory. The way that the legislature set the statutory scheme up in 1996 has never been changed. And so there are some restrictions on it in that regard that I think are onerous to somebody who wants to get cash assistance. And the other part of that, you know, is it's a political question. I mean, I think if you were to look across the United States, you'd see your red states, as it is, probably lean away from cash assistance and are more into the theory of let's create programs to teach job skills and other life skills to help people get off of federal assistance and state assistance and to be self-sufficient. And then, you know, you probably would see in your blue states that it's more like the traditional welfare. So it's really a political taste, right? Who's in control? Who's the party in power? How do we want to do it? And so Mississippi has been for a long time sort of an anti-welfare. You know, that's been the school of thought by our elected officials. And so, you know, the focus has always been on let's make programs and put resources out here for people to better themselves. And so, look, even if that's the idea, you know, it's still, you know, you still then say, okay, well, why weren't we using the money for that? Well, the wild thing about it is, you know, back in 2015, 2016, around the time John Davis became executive director, Anna Wolf was writing articles about the fact that Mississippi wasn't using the vast majority of its TANF money. You know, TANF comes and you get to keep it. It comes every year and you hold on to it. But if you don't spend it within 3 years, you have to give it back. And Mississippi was sitting on a huge surplus of that. And so that's where this big increase in what was given to the two nonprofits came from. was a lot of the surplus. Now, to be clear, there were a lot of other entities. There were probably 30-ish or 40 sub-grantees before they changed the model that were getting some TANF money in whatever amounts from MDHS every year. And look, these are great organizations. There are nonprofit organizations that do healthcare, they do children's mental health, they do other things, and they were using that TANF money for exactly what you would think is right down the middle of the street. And we could name plenty of them that were doing great, traditional, what you would expect with it work. But John Davis decides that, look, he was kind of like Oprah with these contracts, like she is with cars, right? You get a contract and you get a contract and you get a contract. And there was never any negotiation. John would just say, hey, I want you to do this. Here's what we're going to pay you. And here's the contract. I had one of my lawyers at MDHS drafted up. So you're going to have this contract through this organization. And he would tell him, he would go to Nancy, Nancy, you're going to give this guy this contract. This is the work he's going to do for us. And yeah, boss, you got it. And the other part of the thing, the context that people need to understand is these entities weren't operating independently anymore. MDHS wasn't over here as the state agency with the doors locked. And then these two nonprofits were separate. They had created this concept called Families First. And what they were putting out to the public was these services are provided by the Families First initiative. It wasn't by MDHS or by the individual organization. They were interchanging staff and personnel and resources a lot. And so it became normal. By the time Teddy DiBiase shows up, they're mixed up everywhere. And so there are people with a contract at MCEC working at MDHS, or people that work for MDHS whose office is at, the Family Resource Center in Tupelo. I mean, it's all over the place. And so, it was chaotic. And so that's a lot of what was going on. But yeah, when you think about how much money are you going to spend on advertising? How much money are you going to spend on this program or that program? Certainly, I think people are well justified in looking back at it after the fact and saying, well, that wasn't the most effective use of that money, or that really wasn't where you should have applied that money.
I'm cut off. Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you if you can hear me.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I just can't see you.
Oh, she had to cut the break. Sorry. I just couldn't see it. There's a test. Sorry, we can't hear it. There's one of those emergency warnings. We get hit with those. Yeah. We can hear it on our end, I guess.
Wave. Visit purplewave.com to get started today.
Get ready, Louisiana! Johnny's Pizza House is turning up the heat with our sweet the swamp pizza. Packed with crawfish, shrimp, a taste of crack, andouille sausage, bell peppers, onions, jalapenos, and a blend of Cajun spices, all smothered in delicious mozzarella cheese. It's the perfect bite of the bayou and the perfect meal for any Cajun crave. Try our Cajun flip or dive into a sweet the swamp pizza bowl. A taste of Louisiana flavor is waiting on you. Let's share it guys today at Johnny's Pizza House.
All right, Kim Wade here. Hot weather requires us to run the AC nonstop. Pure Air Consultants can inspect your unit today to ensure your AC is operating at peak performance. Pure Air Consultants is your go-to Rheem partner that can get the job done and have you resting in comfort in no time. Locally owned and operated, they have proudly served our community for over 22 years. Contact Pure Air Consultants today at mypureairconsultants.com. Rheem and Pure Air Consultants to the rescue.
CBS News brief from Dubai. Correspondent Chris Livesay has more on President Trump's threat to bomb Iran's energy facilities over the closed Strait of Hormuz.
Moments before that deadline was set to expire, Trump wrote on Truth Social that he was extending that ultimatum by 5 days due to, quote, very productive talks
with an unspecified leader in Iran. Tehran denies it. CBS's Tom Hanson's at New York's LaGuardia Airport, where 2 people were killed, 2 pilots, when a passenger jet hit a fire truck.
One of the central parts of this investigation is definitely going to fall on air traffic control. Who was manning the towers? How many people were manning the towers? Were they overwhelmed, or were they sufficiently staffed?
With a political edge, President Trump comments on ICE agents helping TSA at some airports.
If that's not enough, I'll bring in the National Guard. We're not going to have the Democrats destroy our country.
CBS News Brief, I'm Steve Kathan.
Hello, friends and neighbors. This is David Frederick. I'm here to tell you about the latest development here at Frederick Sales and Service in Brandon. In an effort to always bring you the very best brands, I am proud to announce that Frederick Sales and Service is Central Mississippi's newest dealer for Skag zero-turn mowers and products. We have deals on one of the industry's best brands of zero-turn mowers, Skag. Buy now and pay later because 0% financing is also available at Frederick's. Come see our inventory. We're here serving you for over 3 decades in Brandon since 1993.
If you want the best health care, where do you go? The Mayo Clinic. If you want the best care for your vehicle, where do you go? Mayo Auto Clinic in Raymond. Mayo Auto Clinic does foreign and domestic vehicles and diesel repair. Mayo Auto Clinic has ASC certified techs with over 25 years of experience. You can extend the life of your car or truck when you take it to Mayo Auto Clinic. For cost-effective repairs and maintenance, go to the best. Mayo Auto Clinic. Open weekdays at 7 a.m. Highway 18 in Raymond. Acme Pizza and Daiquiris is leveling up. A whole new Acme Pizza and Daiquiris is now open at the Reservoir at Beethoven's Boardwalk in Ridgeland, right next door to Cock of the Walk. And the new Acme Pizza and Daiquiris will have all of your old favorites too, like the Acme Dynamite Balls and Garlic Knots, and the best specialty pizzas ever, like the Pig, the Sergeant Pepperoni, the Serpent Turf, and lots more. Come to the all-new Acme Pizza and Daiquiris location on the Res in Ridgeland, next to the Cock of the Walk.
Need a new car? Then march right over to Mazda of Jackson and spring in the savings. Get 1.9% financing for 63 months on all 2025 CX-5s, 2026 CX-90s, CX-50s, CX-70s, and Mazda 3s with approved credit. And get 1-year maintenance included on your new vehicle purchase. Don't wait another minute to experience Mazda's exhilarating performance, top-notch safety, and reliability. So get to Mazda of Jackson today, where pre-owned vehicles and hassle-free trade-in options are also available. Shop online or visit Mazda of Jackson, I-55 Frontage Road.
Hey guys, this is Casey Ellis with Ellis Autoplex, located on Highway 471 in Brandon. Ellis Autoplex, known as Little Truck City, is your old school mom and pop style dealership that's family owned and operated. We specialize in 4-wheel drive trucks, but don't worry, we have cars and SUVs too. Looking to sell your vehicle? Bring it by Ellis Autoplex, where we pay fair market value and we cut you a check on the spot. Need your vehicle service or repaired? We can handle that too. Shop us online or set your appointment at ellisautoplex.com. That's ellisautoplex.com. Come together.
Welcome back into the Lindsey Beckham Show. We are live here in the Men's Health and Women's Wellness of Mississippi studios. Having a little bit of technical difficulties with the sound because we have 2 people on the stream, but I believe Shaun is going to call in on the phone line and maybe that everybody will be able to hear a little bit better, because we do want to be able to understand exactly the details of what took place with the Ted DiBiase trial that we got the judgment in Friday afternoon. Of course, we are joined by Mr. Scott Gilbert, who was the defense attorney in that trial. Let's see if this works better. Hey, Shaun, you there? Shaun?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have Shaun on the phone line, and we've got Scott joining us through the stream. Okay, let's see if this is better. Sorry about that emergency broadcast interruption as well. Like, everybody's just trying to make sure that we don't get hurt today.
I guess so.
Yeah, so y'all can pick up where you left off. I was so sorry I had to cut y'all off, but didn't.
No, it's okay. Scott, I actually had a question for you that I heard you address a little bit on Clay's show, but I want to I just have some thoughts about it. It was about the, possible withdrawing of guilty pleas, which also, can occur in state court too, because I think Brett DiBiase has only pled guilty in state court. Is that correct?
No, Brett also pled guilty in federal court.
Okay, so everybody's pled equally in federal and state court. Is that right? Or the ones that are on the list?
I think several have. So I don't know that Christy Webb had a state court case, and I'm not sure about some of the others that were not at all related to Teddy, like Latimer Smith or Jacob Van Landingham.
Okay. Well, do you think, and I know you addressed this a little bit with Clay, but I know there's usually like about 4 grounds for withdrawing under Rule 11 federal rules, right? Like that you can do it, but it's difficult. I understand it's very difficult to do that, but it is possible that they can attempt to do it, correct?
Yeah, they can. Generally speaking, the federal law requires you to allege actual innocence, particularly after you've, under oath admitted to a particular basis in fact, a very detailed factual basis about what it is that you agree the government would prove if the case went to trial. There's also, the judges in the plea colloquy, the plea hearing will ask, are you pleading guilty because you are in fact guilty? And the defendant has to say yes. And so, courts favor finality. And so it's very difficult to do. You'd have to, I think, to get around that, you'd have to make a showing of some sort of misconduct or bad faith on the part of the government. Of course, I have no reason to believe that occurred at all. But
sure,
it's so it can be very difficult. The case law out there, even on Brady exculpatory evidence, says you're not entitled to that before a plea. So it can be it's an uphill battle for sure to get out of a guilty plea in federal court.
Right, and they could make a claim, and obviously I don't think this is applicable to any of the defendants, but that would be like it was an involuntary plea, right? That would still be under the rule.
Yeah,
that would be permissible.
Yeah, that is a basis that they can certainly allege and base it on, is because of the length and the depth of a federal guilty plea can take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
In state court, it's anywhere from 3 to 7 minutes, and so
it's so much different. Sure.
And that's the reason why. I mean, that's why judges are smart people, and they figure out over the course of years what do we need to be putting in the record to prevent this from being undone. Because there's nothing like I said, there's nothing like finality. Close the file, move on to the next one.
Well, I was looking at some of the reasons, kind of going over that this weekend, because I'd seen it kind of put out there that this could be a possibility. One of them is that they misunderstood the plea agreement. Now, I don't know that that's really applicable in terms of, because that would be more as to what the government was going to, recommend, or at least like what is the guideline range, or would we recommend the lower 50% of the guidelines, or whatever that is, may be. But I don't know if you could say that. I was wondering if an argument could be made, and this is my lawyer brain going off, saying that, we understood that we were pleading to conduct that was illegal, but now that we've understood that it's actually not illegal in light of the jury's verdict. Now, I know that's kind of a stretch a bit.
Oh, yeah.
But you have somebody, I'll use an example like Ted DiBiase, right, who, as far as what I understand, and I don't have all the knowledge and things that you do, he had similar conduct to Teddy, not to the work he was doing, but it was Davis steering the money to Brett. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same general concept. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, under that theory, would he be under the same boat that Teddy's in? You understand what I mean?
I do. So there's a couple of things at play there. The first one is, I don't know that anybody that took a federal plea has any real desire to get out of it. Their agreements, particularly the people that pled guilty in state court, right, which Brett is one of, but those people that pled guilty in state court, they made a global deal with the DA's office and the U.S. Attorney's office that they would be sentenced in state court after they were sentenced in federal court, which means they'll get to serve their state time and their federal time together in a federal work camp instead of in a state prison. Now, I don't think any of those folks would choose to go serve their time in a state prison over a federal work camp. Those are two wildly different environments.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, right. No, never.
The downside, though, is that their sentence in the federal cases may end up being significantly longer than their sentences, what they actually serve in state court, because in state court, all the things they pled guilty to are nonviolent crimes that, we refer to as 25% crimes, and they're only going to have to serve 25% of their time. And MDOC may send them home on house arrest or intensive supervision for some period of that as well. So there's an upside and a downside to it for them. The question is, do you want to run the risk of being over here at Central Mississippi Correctional Facility or up at Parchment, or would you rather be over in Alabama and Montgomery at a place with no fences where you're living in a dorm and you're just bored to death all day long?
Yeah, and I think that definitely is a significant risk. And, I mean, obviously, I would think if they were going to do that, they would have to file the same corresponding motion in state court. I think you can do that like under Rule 15. You can withdraw your guilty plea in state court, and that's the rules of criminal procedure. So, I mean, you'd have to be successful on both avenues for that to work, where you were like, you were saying, I'm going to go to trial on, in state and federal court.
Yeah, it's a heavy lift all the way around. You're exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it'd be a pretty big roll of the dice. So I'm just wondering now if there's some of them sitting around saying, wait a second, did I do anything illegal? I mean, there's got to be that question that they're having now after seeing this. Now, I don't mean that as to John Davis or Nancy New, but I mean the lower level ones.
Well, Nancy's plea in federal court didn't have anything to do with this. Her plea in federal court revolved around some submissions that the New Summit School made to the Mississippi Department of Education about teacher staffing.
So when do we think we are ever going to, when are they going to be sentenced, Nancy New and John Davis? I think a lot of people are wondering that.
My guess, Lindsey, is here pretty soon. They've had a very long time to have their pre-sentence reports done and all the documents and information turned into the probation office. And so I would suspect Judge Reeves will set those fairly quickly. I don't think they've ever submitted objections, although I haven't really kept up with it. So there's a process there in the federal system for that. But I would think in very short order, you will see those scheduled on the docket. And those will move forward pretty quickly.
I think everybody's kind of sitting around waiting on that. But Scott, and I don't know how much you can talk about this at all, but Shaun and I have covered the Capitol Police murder, not murders. I wouldn't call them murders at all, but there are several Capitol Police officers who are having to defend themselves for doing their job, basically. Do you have anything you can say about what's going on there?
Since it's before trial, not a lot, not much at all. But what I'll say is, the indictment in that case is particularly interesting. The indictment, which is public, alleges that the officers believed that they were justified in using deadly force, but that they were actually not justified, or that belief was unreasonable. And where you normally see that's called imperfect self-defense. And normally where you see that come up is when someone's charged with murder and they'd like the jury to consider finding them guilty of what we call a lesser included offense of manslaughter. If the facts support it, they can ask for that instruction, basically where the jury's instructed that you can find this person guilty of manslaughter instead of murder if you think they believed what they were doing was justified, but in fact it was not reasonable. Did a lot of research on that to find out if that was actually a legitimate charge, because there's no statute that says that. And there is some case law that says you can charge the way they've charged. And so it's an interesting concept right out of the gate. But look, it's a case with that shouldn't take very long to try. There are very few witnesses. We did submit an expert report that really goes into the facts in a lot of detail, and that is available in the court's public docket. If you're really interested in looking at and discussing the facts. Our expert is retired FBI Special Agent Jeffrey Artis, who did civil rights work and law enforcement investigations for a long time. And he was pretty clear in what his opinion is on the matter.
Yeah.
We actually did a show where we read through that whole report in the past, but I'm glad you did some research on that imperfect self-defense, Scott, because there was me and several prosecutor buddies that were, when we saw that indictment come out, I'd never seen it as being charged by the state. I'd never seen that before either. It was always something that a defendant would put in as a lesser included, like you said, like a lesser included offense. And that's the only way I'd ever seen it. I didn't know you could actually do that until they indicted it that way. But there is some case law that says that you're able to do that.
Oh yeah, we were hot on the trail of that, as you know. I mean, that's your first step in any criminal case is you take the indictment and you check and see, does it really allege an offense? Is it written properly, and does it actually allege a crime? And look, my phone blew up with lawyers from all over the place. You need to move to dismiss that indictment. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. You can't do it that way. And so, we dug into the Westlaw, and sure enough, you can do it that way. It is a valid charge as written.
Yeah, I know. I figured they'd done their research on it before. And as many murder cases as I've tried, I've just never seen that, or at least, in the grand jury, when I was with the DA, we never presented any case that way. Even when we charged many people, we charged with manslaughter. But you just be like, you either really grow into heat of passion or culpable negligence, and that's just kind of the way it would roll. So I just had never seen that before.
Yeah, no, you are in the same boat with the rest of us.
I think there's a lot of confusing things about that entire case that kind of everybody's sitting around scratching their heads like, what's happening here? Why?
Yeah,
This doesn't make a lot of sense.
There'll be a lot to talk about after the fact, Lindsay. Right now, that's set for May 18th, and we'll see how close to the top of the docket we get. Last week, the cases Stephen Frederick and Mike Reinwald were combined, and so we'll be doing both of them together. And so, which I was particularly happy about. Anytime I can add Meredith Coxwell and Bodie McDonald to the trial table, I'll take that 10 out of 10 times. Those guys are legends, and
that's a good thing.
I'll be happy to carry their books. So
that's that. Yeah, hearing Shaun talk about them, I think he probably feels the same way. And I hope to be able to, once this gets up and rolling, I hope to be there as much as possible to see firsthand kind of what goes on with this. I know Shaun would love to sit in as well and be there firsthand, because we're so confused as to why these guys are getting this at them when we just feel like they were doing their job.
It's a difficult time, but I mean, look, anytime somebody's charged with something, it's difficult. Now, look, we all know that the vast majority of the time, they don't need to go much further than the closest mirror to find out why they're in that situation. But there are some exceptions to that, and so of course, obviously, that's our position. But look, a jury will decide, and we'll try it there and not anywhere else. And like I said, I believe in the jury system. I've always seen jurors. It doesn't matter what their makeup is. I've seen juries corporately come together and take their job very seriously, and always strive to do the right thing.
Yeah. Well, we have that system for a reason, so hopefully it always does work. We do have jurors who really truly want to do the right thing. I've never gotten to serve on a jury. Maybe one day I will. I think it would be fun. Shaun always laughs at me when I say that.
Yeah, you do not want to do that's not something. Yeah.
Look, if you get put on the jury in a case like Karen Reed, I mean, you could make a ton of money after the fact, giving interviews, writing a book.
Without a doubt, my luck is I would get stuck on some dry contract dispute over the purchase of a piece of land somewhere.
Probably, yeah.
Scott, last year Lindsay tried. Judge Peterson nicely let her sit since I didn't have a co-counsel on a capital murder case last year, and she saw how the courtrooms leaks constantly, and it's either super cold or it's super hot. So what I'm saying, I don't want to be one of those people got to sit there in the jury box when the rain's leaking. Look for me for 7 days.
I think Shaun already learned his lesson. He's like, she can't keep her mouth shut long enough for me to let her sit here.
Yeah. She got a little animated. I'm like, you aren't a lawyer, Lindsay. You're just able to sit at counsel table. Be nice.
Well, look, I'll tell you this. I know we're probably getting close to the end, but I had the same experience with Teddy's wife, Kristen. Kristen kind of dove in head first about a year ago to the file, and we were happy to have the help. And so she may have known the information better than anybody. And so I was inundated all day, every day with notes from the first row. Every time somebody would say something that didn't match a document, I'd get a note. And I mean,
that's the thing. Women pay attention to details. See,
listen, it was crazy. A lot of people don't know this, but we got the equivalent. We got like 6 terabytes of discovery in this case. That's the equivalent to about 80 million pages of Word documents.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, thank you so much. I hate to cut y'all off, but we do have to go to break before they cut us off themselves. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk about this today, especially since it's so fresh. And congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Look, I really enjoyed it, guys. Y'all have a great day.
You too. Thank you, Scott.
You too.
All right, y'all stay with us. We got to take a break, but we will be right back here. WYAB 1039, The Lindsey Beckham Show. All right, we ran over. We've only got a few seconds left, but huge thank you to attorney Shaun Yurtkuran, also defense attorney Scott Gilbert, who got a victorious ruling in the DiBiase case last Friday afternoon over in Hinds County. Congratulations to him. I know that was a huge victory for both he and his client. I will be back here tomorrow, same time, same place. Don't miss it. Morgan's out, but we will have Russ Latino on sometime this week. Y'all stay tuned and we'll be back tomorrow.